Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. We're going to be focusing on Spotify today.
Oh, interesting.
From a financial, point of view.
Yeah.
And we've got this pretty cool article from the Motley Fool.
Mm-hmm.
It's called, Where Will Spotify Technology Be in 1 Year?
All right.
So they kind of take a look at, all the kind of numbers and stuff, and we're going to explore what's behind this big surge that Spotify stock has had.
Okay.
And what the future holds,
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. Like, the stock is really, it's been up, it's been down.
It's been on a roller coaster.
Yeah, it has.
It's really interesting to see how a company in such a competitive market, Spotify has really managed to not just survive, but really thrive.
Right.
It kind of shows how they're able to change and come up with new ideas, right?
Yeah, and I think if we rewind back to, just a couple of years ago, things weren't looking so hot.
Right.
Their stock crashed, over 80% in 2021 and 2022. And then it, totally flipped. It's up 140% in the last year alone.
Yeah.
And over 540% since, the start of this year.
That's amazing. And, part of that initial drop was definitely tied to how the market was kind of moving away from those growth stocks, especially the ones that were, losing money. It's not just about what Spotify was doing internally, but also how the market was viewing their potential.
So outside of those market trends, what were some of the things that Spotify did to really turn things around?
Well, a lot of it comes down to their CEO, Daniel Ek.
Okay.
He made some pretty, tough choices, like cutting back on staff. They let go of about 17% of their workforce back in 2023.
Wow.
It was a hard decision, but it really helped them get their costs under control.
It seems like that move really helped their operating margin, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that basically tells us how much profit they make for every dollar of revenue.
You got it. That's exactly what it is. Okay.
And, for Spotify, that margin went from a really scary negative 7.8% to a pretty decent 11.4%.
Wow.
That kind of turnaround, that really shows investors that they're serious about being financially stable. And that's really important for growth in the long run.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, while making money is super important, it's not the only thing.
Right.
But how have they kept growing their revenue?
Well, they've been remarkably consistent. They've managed nearly 18% revenue growth on average every quarter for the past 5 years.
Okay.
And even more recently, that growth has actually sped up a bit.
Nearly 18% every quarter for 5 years.
It's impressive.
It's huge, especially since they're not some tiny startup anymore, right?
Right.
I mean, they're a big deal, market cap of over $103 billion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To see that kind of growth at their size is really quite something.
That is something else.
It shows they really understand their market, and they've got a good plan for keeping that growth going.
So I guess that kind of growth really comes down to people using their platform.
Absolutely. You got to have the users.
So let's talk about how they make money.
Sure.
The article mentions two main ways: subscriptions, which make up a whopping 88% of their revenue.
Yeah.
And then advertising. Can you break that down a bit more?
Sure. So for subscriptions, they've got different price points, somewhere between $6 and $20 a month.
Okay.
It really depends on what the user wants.
Right.
This kind of lets them appeal to a wider audience and reach more people.
Makes sense, offering different options for different types of listeners.
Exactly.
But I'm guessing that getting those free users to become paying subscribers is really important for them to keep growing.
Oh, absolutely. That's where the real potential is.
So how are they doing with that?
Well, if we look at their user growth numbers, in the last quarter, they saw an 11% increase in those ad-supported MAUs.
MAUs.
Monthly active users. Basically, how many people are using the platform each month. And their premium subscribers went up by 12%.
That's really good. So what does all this tell us about, Spotify's future?
Well, I'd say things are looking pretty good. They're attracting new users, turning them into paying customers, and they're doing it all while making a decent profit.
Sounds like a recipe for success.
It does, doesn't it?
So they've got a strong track record, they're financially solid, and they have a clear plan for growth.
Yeah.
What are the experts saying about Spotify in the years to come?
Well, analysts are predicting some pretty impressive numbers for them in 2025.
Oh, yeah. What kind of growth are they expecting?
They're forecasting sales to grow by about 15% and, get this, a 60% jump in earnings.
Wow, 60% increase in earnings is a big prediction.
It is.
Why are they so optimistic?
Well, it boils down to the basics. They have a proven history of growth, a large and loyal user base, and they never stop innovating.
Right, and they're in a market with huge potential. Music is like a universal language.
Exactly. It's something that people connect with deeply.
Yeah, for sure. Music is everywhere. But the way we listen to it keeps changing, doesn't it? New technologies and platforms are always popping up.
That's a really good point. You have to look at the bigger picture. How might these changes impact Spotify in the long term?
Yeah, what kind of challenges and opportunities might they face?
Those are the big questions, and it's definitely something worth exploring further.
It's a fascinating area for sure. Yeah, for sure. So what are some of these new technologies that could really change how we listen to music?
Well, one thing we're seeing is the rise of immersive technologies like VR and AR. Those have the potential to totally change how we experience music.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think about, like going to a virtual concert and feeling like you're actually there in the crowd.
Yeah.
Feeling that energy.
Exactly. And then there's also this growing trend of personalization.
Okay.
Algorithms are getting really good at creating playlists just for you.
Right.
Based on what you like.
Yeah.
It's all about making the music experience more personal and immersive.
So where does Spotify fit into all of this?
I think they're in a great spot to take advantage of these trends.
Yeah.
They're already putting a lot of effort into personalization and discovery features, and they're not afraid to try new things like their move into podcasts.
Yeah. That was a smart move for sure.
Right.
Podcasts have gotten huge.
Yeah.
And Spotify's right there in the mix.
It's all about staying ahead of the game and adapting to how people are listening. And I think Spotify's got the vision and the ability to do that.
Right. So they're not just a music platform anymore. They're more like an all-around audio entertainment company.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay. So you mentioned challenges earlier. What are some of the things that might get in the way of Spotify hitting those big growth targets?
Well, in any industry as fast-moving as music streaming, competition is always going to be a factor.
Sure.
New players are popping up all the time, and the existing platforms are always looking for ways to be better. Spotify has to stay on top of things and keep finding ways to stand out.
So it's not just about keeping up with the tech.
No.
But also about really understanding what the competition is doing and how to respond.
Exactly.
Are there any other potential roadblocks they might face?
Another big one for Spotify, and really any company that relies on having lots of content, is licensing. Sure. They got to make sure they have the rights to stream all that music from different artists and labels.
Yeah.
And those deals can be pretty complicated and expensive.
Right. So they need to be really good at negotiating and keeping those agreements in place if they want to keep things running smoothly.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance, keeping both the artists and the listeners happy.
Exactly.
And then you've got the challenges that come with being a global company.
Right.
Different countries have different rules, different cultures, different economic situations.
Yeah, that adds a whole other layer of complexity to their business. They got to be flexible and adapt to all those different markets.
For sure. Going global is exciting, but it definitely comes with its own set of hurdles.
Okay, so we've talked about all the exciting potential and the possible roadblocks.
Right.
But let's get back to the heart of our deep dive here. What are the main takeaways from what we've learned about Spotify's success?
Well, we see a company that's been through some rough times and come out the other side even stronger.
Right.
They've really gotten their finances in order by cutting costs and focusing on growing their revenue.
It's a classic story of bouncing back and adapting.
It is. And what I find particularly interesting about Spotify is their dedication to innovation. They're not just sitting back and relaxing. They're constantly trying to push the limits of what's possible in audio entertainment.
Yeah, they're not afraid to try new things and take some risks.
Right. Whether it's getting into podcasts, trying out new technologies, or personalizing the listening experience, that's what sets them apart from the crowd.
And it shows they really get what their users want and need and how those needs are changing.
Exactly. That kind of forward thinking is a key part of what makes a company successful.
Now, while analysts are pretty optimistic about Spotify's future, we know things can change quickly in the world of music and tech. What's one big question our listeners should keep in mind as they explore this topic further?
That's a great question. How might these new technologies like VR, AR, and personalized music experiences really impact Spotify down the line?
Yeah, will they be able to smoothly incorporate those technologies into their platform?
Or will they face tough competition from newcomers who are all about those cutting-edge experiences?
It's exciting to think about all the possibilities and challenges that are out there. We've shared our insights, the analysis, and the main points from our research.
Right.
Now it's your turn to keep digging.
Do some more research, think critically, and come to your own conclusions. The world of music is always changing, and there's always something new to discover.
And hey, remember, in the world of business and technology, you never stop learning.
That's what makes it so fun.
Exactly. We get to dive into these complex topics together, find those hidden insights, and walk away with a better understanding of how things work.
It's all about feeding that curiosity and empowering ourselves with knowledge.
Shouldn't have said it better myself. We hope you feel inspired to keep asking those questions, keep exploring, and keep those headphones on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Spotify.
It's been pretty amazing, right, to see how Spotify got to where they are today.
Yeah, definitely. And all the things that might affect them going forward.
And you know what's really cool? This deep dive, it kind of goes beyond just looking at one company, you know?
Right. It's like getting a glimpse into how tech, money, and even art all connect.
Yeah, exactly. We often think of music as this, like, pure creative thing, but there's this whole system behind it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. You've got the artists, the record labels, the streaming services, and of course, the listeners.
And each one has their own goals and challenges, and they all affect the bigger picture.
That's true.
So, in a way, this deep dive is like a case study, right?
Yeah.
Showing us how innovation really works out in the real world.
Makes sense. With Spotify as our example, we've seen how a company changes, takes chances, and tries to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, that's a good lesson for anyone, no matter what they're into.
Definitely. Whether you're starting a business, investing, or just curious about the world, Spotify's story has something to teach us.
For sure. And we've just scratched the surface here.
Yeah, that's the thing about a deep dive. It's really just a starting point for your own exploration.
Exactly. So if something we talked about today really caught your attention, don't let that go.
Keep digging, read more, connect the dots, and form your own opinions.
Because that's how we become more informed, more engaged, and more prepared for whatever comes next.
And you never know, you might stumble upon some really cool insights along the way.
Well, that's what the deep dive is all about.
Thanks for joining us on this journey of discovery.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those headphones on.